let's spend a few minutes learning the After Effects interface. Okay. Now today we're working in After Effects CS6. If you are using CC or CS5 or 5.5 or some other version, these are there are unique things about each of these versions, but for the most part, for all the part today, everything I'm going to tell you today will work on any of the versions. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started with this. The first thing I'd like to do is just take you on a tour of the interface real quick. And in order to do that, I will need for you, if you've been playing in After Effects already, I would like for you to go to Window, Workspace, and make sure yours says Standard. And once you do that, I want you to go Window, Workspace, Reset Standard. Reset Standard. And then click OK, or Yes. And then all your windows are going to be in the same places as my windows. It'll be a little bit easier for you to look at things. Okay, so what do we have here? Well, up in the upper left-hand corner, we've got the project window. This is where all of the assets for your show are going to be. And if you want to import assets, you'll simply double-click in the gray area here, or you can click File, Import. File, Import. Where's Import? There we go. File, Import. You can also click Command I or Control I on the PC if you're using a PC. Okay, up at the top, here's your toolbar. We're going to be clicking on most of these tools this semester, not all of them, but most of them. And then, of course, across the top, you've got your normal drop-down menus here, and we'll be learning a lot about those as well. In the middle of the screen, this is your composition window. Now, if you are used to editing in Adobe Premiere or Final Cut or some of these other softwares, this is not the same. You only have one composition window to work with. We can open other windows when necessary, but for the most part, all we need is the one window. And at the bottom of the screen, this is the timeline that's going to be associated with this window. If you've never done anything using a timeline before, the way this works is you have a stack of layers over here, and whatever is on top, that's what has priority or precedence. So, for instance, here's our background layer. If I were to move that to the top of the stack, well, everything would disappear because it's on top and it's a solid white layer. It's just going to cover everything up. So we want the background at the bottom. Everything reads out in time, so we'll see time across here, and nothing's happening in this particular one. We don't see anything animating in this. And if you want to zoom in and out on the timeline, you can do so right here. This changes nothing about the show itself. It just allows you to look at things in a tighter view if you drag the little slider over to the right. Now we're looking at frames. We're looking at a very, very close view of this. If I go all the way back, I see the entire timeline, and in this case, it's only 6 seconds long. So, okay, so I want to let's get a look at the pre-animated version of this. Oh, by the way, over here on the right, this is going to be multiple different windows and menus that you're going to use over here. I'll explain more about those as we get to them. The most used that you have is this effects and presets window. We'll talk all about that stuff here later on. Okay, we do have a pre-animated version of this logo. Now I might as well go ahead and play it for you so that you can see. Now in order to play the timeline, in order to do what I just did, if you are on a full keyboard, if you have a keyboard with a number pad on it, all you need to do is press the 0 key on the number pad. That's not the 0 key that's above the letters on the keyboard. That one doesn't work. 0 on the number pad. If you do not have a number pad, you can click the little arrow that's right over here. This is called RAM Preview. And we click on that, and it just plays out just like so. Okay. Now you'll see this green line down here. This green line represents whether or not something has been rendered. And in After Effects, we render everything to RAM by default. So the more RAM you have, the more frames you can render. If you find that you have a long timeline and you are only able to render a part of the timeline or preview a part of the timeline, it's because you don't have enough RAM to preview the entire timeline. That doesn't affect when you export. When you export a file, you'll export the whole thing. No problem there. Now, before I forget about this, I want to go ahead and ask you to go to the properties or preferences. In the PC world, it's going to be under File, but here in the Mac world, it's going to be under After Effects at the top of the screen. And I just want you to go to Preferences, Memory, and Multiprocessing. And I suggest that you check the little checkbox here for Render Multiple Frames Simultaneously. For most situations, this is going to be the best way and the fastest way to render your timeline. So go ahead and do that. I don't think there's anything else we need to do here right now other than in some older versions of After Effects, you will need to click on the checkbox for automatically save projects, autosave. Now this is by default is set to every 20 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and set mine to every 10 minutes so that in the maximum project versions of 5, what this does is every 10 minutes it'll save a new version of your project. Once it gets to 5, it will then save over the oldest one. Now you'll also be saving your own versions, but just in case After Effects crashes, the worst thing that can happen to you is that you'll lose 10 minutes worth of work if you set this up. So good idea to just go ahead and make sure that autosave is turned on. I think in CC it's turned on by default, but in CS6 it is not. In earlier versions, I think it was for a while, and then it wasn't for a while, and I can't remember now. But anyway, yeah, do that. Okay, back to the timeline. 0 key on the number pad, and we can see this animation rendering out. So let's kind of dissect what's going on in here. First of all, notice the eyeballs over on the side here on the left-hand side of the timeline. These are going to show you layer visibility. Okay. Now you'll notice that this logo is broken down into all of these individual segments. Now I can turn these off by just clicking on the little eyeball for each of these individual layers. But if I want to look at an individual layer all by itself, right here is the solo button and or the solo switch. So we can turn on solo for just a few layers if we want to. For instance, those two. Now if we just want to look at those two layers, and that is completely separate even from the background, just we'll watch only those two layers. Okay, there you have it. And I'm going to press the space bar to stop the timeline. By the way, again, if you're used to editing, you're used to using the space bar to start and stop. Don't use the space bar to play out the timeline. Instead, use the 0 key on the number pad or use the little arrow over here on the right. You gotta do it. Don't use the space bar for anything except stop. Okay? There are other things we can do with the space bar, but that's all we're going to talk about now. So we can click on the solo button to unsolo those layers, and we can see the whole thing playing out. But it's kind of nice if we look at things just one at a time. So if I just click on the background layer here and this one particular object, which is the top piece of the logo, I can scrub using what's called the CTI right here, the current time indicator. Some people call this the playhead. Both of those are, you can say either one. So we see here that we start in black and this white layer fades in. The background layer fades in. And as we continue to scrub, we see this green object come in. This object happens to be a shape layer. We can identify shape layers because they have a little star beside them over here. Okay. Incidentally, we can identify type layers because they have a little T in them. So if we solo one of the type layers, we'll see that as it animates. Okay, here we go. I don't know why you would want to solo just those two, but maybe that's what you want to do. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the type layer for now because I do have a reason for soloing just this one layer, or just these two. I'm going to click first on the background layer. And so I just clicked right on top of the type right here. And what is animating here? Transparency actually is animating. We can type T for transparency to see the keyframes that have been set for transparency here. Now T, you'll notice, T for transparency actually shows up as opacity. Well, opacity is the opposite of transparency. Opacity when something is fully opaque. So 100% opacity means 0% transparency, just to make it really confusing. So right now it's 0% opaque. It's invisible. And it slowly fades in until it gets to this point right here where it is 100% opaque. It's 100% visible. Okay? All right, let's look at the next one. I'm going to go ahead and twirl the little arrow up over here, twirl the next one down, this logo top. And now by twirling it down, we can see something going on here. Something is animating. We don't know what these are because these things are hidden from us. We will know these are keyframes for us to look at if we see them as diamonds. This is a little dot. Okay, so how do I find out what's animating in this? Well, it's very simple. If you press the U key, you're going to have to select the layer and press the U key. We call that the Uber key because it's going to show us everything that's animating. So here, again, we see opacity is animating. Also something called rotation, scale, and position. Many things are animating in this layer. And you might also notice that some of these things, some of these keyframes don't look like diamonds, but rather they look like a little I don't know, hourglass or something. I'm not sure what that shape is. Anyway, we're going to animate all of these different things. Position, scale, rotation, opacity. These are the 4 that we are going to be working on animating today. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started animating. You are going to see that you have a composition. Well, this is a composition right here. This little tab represents a composition. Notice the composition menu up here at the top of the screen. We have another tab that's open, which is another composition. This is the version that you are going to animate. And by the way, notice here in the project window that you see these 2 compositions listed here. Those compositions are represented by these little this little look for you, if you can kind of see that little icon there. Now, if we scrub the timeline, or we were to play the timeline using the 0 key on the number pad, we would see that nothing is animating. So let's go ahead and start by fading in that very bottom layer. Okay, so I think that fade takes place over 1 full second. So what I'm going to do is go to 1 second on the timeline. I can see that it reads 1 second over here, and I can also just go to that 1 second mark. And I'm going to click on T for transparency, or type T for transparency. And the way to set a keyframe is to click on the stopwatch. So you click the stopwatch right there, and you're going to see that a keyframe gets set for us. Now, anytime we move to a new position and change something about this parameter, it's automatically going to set a new keyframe. So if I were to type 0 in here, I could add a keyframe. If I were to drag this to the left or to the right, we can change that number and we can get the same sort of a thing. Okay, and you can see that the little diamond keyframe shows up there for us. Now, here's the takeaway from this. In order to set your first keyframe, you click the stopwatch. But you don't set any other keyframes by clicking on this stopwatch. In fact, if you were to click on this stopwatch again, you will notice that the keyframes will disappear. Okay, no more keyframes. So that's a bad thing for us. We've already set our keyframes, so only click the stopwatch one time. I'm going to go ahead and undo by clicking Command Z, and that will get us back to this point where we see these objects animating in. Now you'll notice that I started at 1 second and then animated backwards. I set this first, and that's the case for all of these objects. I'm going to be using that same situation to animate all of these objects. I'm going to start from the point at which they are supposed to park and then back up from there. Okay? Now, let's move forward here a little bit. So we fade in, and let's see, maybe the next thing we'll do is we will bring in this top layer, this logo top. Okay? So let's go ahead and start at let's say 1 second, and then we'll go from 1 second to 2 seconds. It's probably too long, but let's go ahead. We'll start at the 2 second mark, and we're going to animate position, rotation, scale, opacity, all 4 of those parameters. Let's start with transparency. T for actually we'll do transparency left. That's bad for us. Let's go ahead and start with position. Okay, now P for position will show us that animating property. We can set a position keyframe right here. And by the way, I'm going to roll the scroll bar on the mouse in because I want to look at this object right here. Well, I can't really see the object. Here's your next keyboard shortcut, and that is if you are inside this window and you hold the space bar down, notice the cursor turns into a little hand, and that hand will allow us to reach up here and move around inside our composition window. I notice that this thing is not lined up perfectly, and I need to line that thing up. So I'm going to go and get my selection tool, and I've got this object selected. Now I'm just going to nudge it into position. You do this just like in Photoshop using the left, right, up, and down cursor keys. I'm just going to type the left cursor key once. No, it's more than that. I'm going to type it quite a bit until I get that lined up. That looks much better. Okay, so again, I'm nudging these using the cursor keys. Okay, so now that I've got it all lined up and looking pretty, I can see that I now have a keyframe for this. I'm going to go back to the 1 second mark now, and I'm going to go ahead and roll my scroll bar back on the mouse. And I'm instead of these numbers right here, let me explain these numbers really quick. These numbers represent horizontal, or X, and vertical, or Y. So X and Y, horizontal, vertical. Horizontal, left and right. Vertical, up and down. Okay, so if I alter these numbers by dragging them left or right or typing something in here, we can see that they change right there. But in this case, what I really want to do is just reach up here and grab this thing and move it off. Now, there's a couple of points that I need to make obvious to you at this point. And one of them is that we have this line right here. We have this little thing right here. It's called a motion path. This is the path that the object is taking. But even crazier, wait a minute, the object is up there. Doesn't make any sense. Why is this motion path all the way down here? Well, there's a very good reason for that, and that is something called the anchor point. This happens to be the anchor point for this particular layer. It's in a very strange spot, and we're going to revisit this whole process later, but I'm going to go ahead and show you how to move the anchor point. So I'm going to go ahead and undo, Command Z, and I'm going to go back to our original point at which we set our position, and we're going to change this anchor point. I want to pull the anchor point over here. So the way we do this is with this crazy little tool called the Pan Behind tool. So if I go and click on the Pan Behind tool, now I can reach over there and grab that anchor point and bring it right over. So I'm just going to put it sort of, I don't know, right around in that area so it makes kind of sense whenever we move this. Okay, now that we've got the anchor point set in the proper place, we're going to go back to the 1 second mark. I'm going to get my selection tool from the top, and I'm going to move this out. And now you can see that the anchor point seems to correspond correctly with this. So if I render this piece of the timeline, we can see, boom, there it comes. Okay, so let's go back to the 2-second mark again, and let's try another type of animation. Let's try scale. Okay, keyboard shortcut for scale is S. There is scale. So I'm going to go ahead and set a keyframe for scale. Then I'm going to move it over here, and I'm just going to change the scale a little bit. Not much. Right now it's set for 77. I don't know. Maybe I'll make it bigger. Maybe I'll make it start bigger, 100. Okay, so it's going to start big and get smaller as it moves into place. All right. Now we have two things animating. Okay, I would like to see those two things together. So I'm going to go ahead and press the U key, and that's going to show me both of the animating properties. Okay, now the next thing I'm going to animate is rotation. R for rotation, type R. Okay, now when you type R, we're going to set a keyframe again at that 2-second mark, and then I'm going to come back to the 1-second mark here, and I'm going to rotate it a little bit. I don't know exactly how I'm going to rotate it, but maybe this much. Whoa, okay, something happened here. Now we're in a kind of a pickle here. We've got this rotation. Now that we have this rotation, we can see that it's sort of getting into the screen here, and I don't want that to be in the screen. I want it to be completely out of the screen at this point. So I'm just going to reach up there and grab it and move it a little bit. Okay, so now we have position, rotation, scale, and there this thing comes in, rests in place. Last one we're going to do, opacity. So T for transparency or opacity, and we're going to go ahead and click the stopwatch at 2 seconds, move to 1 second, and I'm going to make the opacity 0. Okay, now it's time to render. And there we can see, boom, that object comes in. All right, and bang, it parks. Now I want to show you something real quick. I'm going to go ahead and press the U key to reveal all of these animating properties. And what I notice about this animation is it's very stiff. Everything that happens, when it comes in, it just, bam, it just stops. It would be much nicer if this animation were to kind of put on the brakes and slow to a stop rather than stopping on a dime. Okay, these type of keyframes are called linear keyframes. They start at 100% speed and they stop on a dime. But we do have a way that we can give these animating properties, these keyframes, a gas pedal and a brake. And the way we do that is with something called Easy Ease. So I'm going to select position, scale, and rotation just by dragging a box around them. Just going to drag a box around them, just like so. And I have a couple of choices here. I can right-click and go to, you can't see this, guys. Keyframe Assistant, Easy Ease. Okay. I think we can also go, this is probably in, let's see, is it in Layer? Composition. Oh, I'm sure it's in here somewhere. Animation. There we go. Animation, Keyframe Assistant, Easy Ease. But it's much easier if you just use the F9 key. F9. F9 will give us a gas pedal and brakes. So we can now go back and preview this animation again, and you can see that the animation now occurs much more smoothly. Kind of comes to a stop, kind of puts on the brakes. Okay, there. So what your task is from here is to take this animation, take this start that we have, and do your own thing. I want you to animate all of these properties using position, scale, rotation, and transparency. And if you need to, go over here and look at the one that we've animated for you already, and look at how things are animating. Let me go ahead and get this so I can see the whole timeline. We can see that first object comes in just like, let's see, whoops, I went the wrong direction. There we go. Now we can see all 6 seconds. We're going to see, oh, I see what we're doing. We have this soloed over here. Let me unsolo those layers. And so now we can see all of these objects animating. So that green is all the way out of the screen, but the pieces of the N are not. The pieces of the N are all on the screen, and those are tumbling in. And you'll notice that there's a line that moves across from left to right, and that the text moves from bottom to top or top to bottom, and so forth. Okay? So, your job is to animate all of these things. Now remember that you're going to use the pan behind tool to select an object and set up its anchor point. Now this particular one, the anchor point's set for us already. That's good. Okay, let's go to the next layer. Oh, maybe I have set the anchor points on all these for you. It looks like those are already set up for you. Let's see if there are any that are not set. Okay, let's see. This one, the anchor point is set down here in the lower left. So if we want to move that anchor point, we can do so right there, like so. How about this one? Same thing. So we can take that one and maybe move it over to here. Okay? So now your anchor points are set, and that way, whatever happens at the anchor point, everything is going to move or rotate around that anchor point. So if I click R for rotation, and I try to rotate this, you'll see that it rotates right around that anchor point. If I had left my anchor point down here, whenever I rotate this, you'll see that it rotates like a swinging door. For wherever the anchor point is, that's where everything is going to rotate from. Okay, that's it. Have fun with this and animate your own version of the logo. You don't have to go with this suggestion. You don't have to do it this way, but you can if you want to. And so go on and have fun with this.